She believed her children were possessed. Not sick, not troubled. Possessed. And in her mind, that changed what was right. Because that belief ended in murder. This is how Lori Vallow convinced herself she was right. No one becomes a headline overnight. Beliefs grow quietly. Lori Vallow was charismatic, social, devout. Religion wasn't new to her, but over time it became more than faith. It became structure, identity, destiny. She immersed herself in apocalyptic podcasts and private religious circles. Ideas about spiritual warfare, chosen people, light and darkness. Concepts that start abstract but slowly begin to organize the world into categories. Then she met Chad Daybell, an author of doomsday fiction, who claimed he received visions. He spoke of past lives, portals, spirits walking among the living. And together, their beliefs hardened. They began labeling people light or dark. But here's what makes this shift dangerous. Once someone is labeled dark, they are no longer simply flawed. They are spiritually replaced. According to testimony, they even assigned percentages, measured how much of a soul was still present. When a person becomes a number, they become manageable. And while these spiritual rankings were being discussed, life insurance policies were being reviewed. Social security payments were still being collected. A move to Hawaii was quietly being planned. Belief and benefit were beginning to overlap. That overlap matters, because when ideology and money point in the same direction, conviction gets stronger. Beliefs can stay abstract for years, until they touch something real. Her daughter, Tylee, her son, JJ. Family photos show smiles, normalcy, ordinary life. But behind the scenes, according to court records and testimony, Lori began describing her own children as dark, not difficult, dark. And in their system, dark didn't mean rebellious. It meant possessed. It meant the original soul was gone. It meant what remained was a vessel. Now imagine how powerful that framing is. Because if the person you love is no longer truly there, then removing them doesn't feel like murder. It feels like rescue. It feels like cleansing. And if, at the same time, financial pressure disappears, freedom increases, and a new life opens up, the brain doesn't see contradiction. It sees alignment. In 2019, the children vanished. At first, the answers were fluid. They're staying with relatives. They're safe. They're fine. But no one saw them. Weeks passed. Then months. Meanwhile, Lori married Chad in Hawaii, on a beach, smiling, and the contrast unsettled the country. Because grief has a rhythm, and hers didn't match. The investigation circled one place again and again. Chad Daybell's property in Idaho. Quiet land, open sky, ordinary from a distance. In June 2020, investigators returned with a warrant. Morning light, reporters waiting, neighbors watching from porches. And then they began to dig. What they found wasn't rumor. It wasn't speculation. It was physical. The remains of 2 children, buried on the property of the man Lori had married. In that moment, theology collapsed into earth. This wasn't prophecy anymore. It wasn't spiritual metaphor. It was dirt and evidence, and the realization that while spiritual percentages were being calculated, benefits were still being deposited. The children weren't hidden by belief alone. They were buried beneath it. In court, the prosecution presented 2 narratives, one spiritual, one financial. Text messages discussing light and dark spirits were shown alongside discussions of insurance policies. Apocalyptic prophecy appeared next to payment records then. This wasn't chaos. It was structure. The jury listened for weeks. When the verdict came, guilty on all major counts related to the deaths of her children, There was no visible collapse, no dramatic reaction, just stillness. And that stillness unsettled people more than tears might have, because tears implied doubt. Stillness suggests certainty, life in prison. But conviction in a courtroom is not the same as conviction in the mind. And belief does not dissolve just because 12 strangers disagree. Years later, Lori chose to represent herself in another trial, connected to the death of her fourth husband. No legal buffer, no mediator, just her. Why? Because if your entire identity is built on divine certainty, admitting guilt isn't just admitting a crime. It's admitting your worldview was wrong, and the human mind resists that more than prison. To her, this may not be defiance. It may be consistency. If she believes she was chosen, then standing alone in court isn't arrogance. It's obligation. We often ask, how could a mother do this? But maybe that question is incomplete. A more unsettling question is, how far can belief stretch before it becomes permission? Because belief can comfort, it can inspire, it can organize chaos, but in the wrong hands it can justify anything, especially when it aligns with desire. And when belief and benefit move together, the mind stops seeing alternatives. The jury delivered its verdict. The court delivered its sentence. But if Lori Vallow still believes she was right, then in her story, she isn't the villain. She's misunderstood. And that is what makes this case so deeply disturbing. Not just what happened, but how convincingly the human mind can rewrite reality. And cases like this force an uncomfortable realization. Extreme belief doesn't begin as violence. It begins as certainty. Certainty that you are right. Certainty that you are chosen. Certainty that your interpretation is clearer than everyone else. Over time, doubt becomes the enemy. Contradiction becomes attack. And disagreement becomes proof that others simply don't understand. When identity fuses with ideology, changing your mind feels like erasing yourself. So the belief tightens. The circle narrows. Outside voices fades. And once that happens, actions don't feel extreme. They feel necessary. That is what makes this story bigger than one courtroom, because the mechanism isn't rare. The human mind is capable of building a world so internally consistent that even the unthinkable feels justified, not because the person is unaware, but because inside their narrative, they are protecting something sacred. And that is the part that lingers, not just the crime, but the conviction